Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who will not be relocating to Chicago. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. I have had one shot of Malort in my life, and that is one shot too many. Moving to Chicago increases the likelihood of having to drink that. So yeah, no Chicago for me.
There should be warning signs at the city limits. Danger.
1,000% should be.
There be Malort here.
Yes. Don't trust anyone who offers it to you and calls it a delicacy. They're lying.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise Nicole Hack is trtrustworthy, right?
Otherwise, yes.
Yeah, otherwise.
And to be fair, she never lied. She just said it's an interesting, unique flavor to Chicago, which is to say, don't drink it.
She chose her words carefully.
She did.
She chose her words carefully.
She's smart.
We have 11 listener questions to answer on today's show, each more delectable than the last. But first...
Shots fired at the first one.
But not Malort shots, though.
No.
But first, there's a bit of news. Sort of, right? There's more like an incendiary quote. The Wall Street Journal published a story essentially catching up with the US Soccer Federation. It was by Rachel Bachman. And the headline is US Soccer Federation struggles deepen. And there are essentially two interesting quotes in there. One was from Tab Ramos about Jay Berhalter, and one was from Dave Vandenberg, former US soccer youth coach. I think he's now with New England, working under Bruce Arena.
You got it.
Which was about the policy that US soccer laid down of all youth team coaches, all coaches must move to Chicago.
Right.
Where would you like to start?
I think he lived in Texas, and he was like, why would I move to a place that's going to be freezing cold every 6 months out of the year? No, thank you.
Yeah, well, you can't play soccer 6 months of the year.
It was strange to me that he then said that and then moved to New England, but whatever.
We can only play 3 months a year.
Yeah, but I guess if you're like actively coaching or helping coach a club team that is going to require day in, day out training, it makes more sense.
All right, before we get to the Chicago stuff, should we start with the Tab Ramos quote?
Sure.
So they quoted Ramos as talking about Jay Berhalter, who's I keep forgetting his job title because he keeps changing it, but essentially he's the commercial and strategy officer. But we all kind of know, because there's a power vacuum where Dan Flynn has been planning to step down ever since his heart surgery.
1982, right? Is when he first announced he might step down? Yeah.
It's been 2 or 3 years that Dan Flynn's been planning to step down. Jay Berhalter, which is Greg Berhalter's brother, has kind of been filling the power vacuum. And then there's all those famous Glassdoor reviews about US soccer that he's overstepping and making life miserable for a lot of US soccer employees.
Yes.
Turns out one of those employees was Tab Ramos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tab Ramos was U20 head coach, not anymore, now he's with Houston. And he was the youth technical director, which should mean he has full authority to make a bunch of youth technical decisions, right? And I've got the quote in front of me for what happened with Tab Ramos and Jay Berhalter. Tab Ramos wanted to set up a goalkeeper, what's the correct phrase? A goalkeeper...
Like specific training course, right?
Yes.
Like a thing centered on helping goalkeepers develop youth national team goalkeepers to give them like intensive training.
And apparently Jay Berhalter said, why would we need a goalkeeping program more than a forwards program?
Right.
And wouldn't let Ramos set up a goalkeeping program for the youth national teams.
So there are two things here that I think like you have to, maybe like the context helps differentiate that. When you first read that, if you don't really know who Jay Berhalter is or sort of the general state of U.S. soccer, you might see that and think like, well, yeah, that's a good point. Like, why have one position and not every single different position? The issue, though...
Goalkeeping is very different from every other position. That's why, right?
I don't disagree with that, but like I don't disagree with that. I also don't necessarily disagree with the logic. The issue is that it's Jay Berhalter making that statement.
Well, here's the other part of Ramos's quote. I was really surprised that someone that doesn't have the technical knowledge could be involved in the decision-making of technical people, which is correct, right? It's not as if the goalkeeping program was a revenue stream or a commercial activity. Then Jay Berhalter should have a say. Right. It's a technical thing about developing goalkeepers for the future.
Yeah. And
just because your brother played centre-back doesn't mean that you know, right? Yeah. Doesn't mean that you know.
Yeah, especially if he'd said centre-back, that would have gone well. At least he said forward. But I guess that's what I mean, is like, had it have been a technical person, if it had been Ernie Stewart saying that, then it's sort of a like, all right, I don't necessarily agree with the decision, but it at least is a decision that I can sort of understand.
Ernie Stewart would be like, why not a little Dutch forwards program?
Yeah. It's exactly how he'd say it too. But yeah, when it's Jay Berhalter chiming in, and then especially with the kind of background of everything you've already mentioned, then it takes a different tone and instead maybe shows, I would say, the overall lack of leadership when it comes to U.S. soccer, that it does now feel like there's maybe a few people at the top doing a bunch of different things, and so there's not real clear designations in who's supposed to be doing what and when.
And it's time. It's time that U.S. soccer appointed a CEO. I understand. So there are quotes in here from U.S. soccer about there's a thorough search being conducted. But it's been a long time. It's been, I think, at least a year since Dan Flynn announced he was stepping down.
Yeah.
I could have found a CEO in that time.
Yes, you could have. And also,
Richard Branson. That's what I chose.
If the CEO that you settled on after that year search was the same person that we thought it was going to be in the very beginning, which is sort of what it was with the Greg Berhalter hire to coach the national team, that if you keep saying there's this extensive search and then you end up appointing Jay Berhalter, that's going to be a huge problem.
Yep. And frankly, it shouldn't be Jay Berhalter. One, because he's not a soccer person.
Right.
He's a revenue person. And two, because his brother is the coach of the US men's national team.
Right.
That's a reason it shouldn't be Jay Berhalter, because there shouldn't be the even the appearance of a conflict of interest. I'm I think well documented on Twitter, arguing with people about this. I don't think that like Greg Berhalter would have been fired if Jay Berhalter, his brother, wasn't so powerful within US soccer. I don't think we're anywhere near that. I don't think the sins of Jay Berhalter should be visited upon Greg Berhalter.
Yeah.
But I still don't think you should have the head coach's brother be the CEO, right? And not least with the Glassdoor reviews, which specifically mention somebody overreaching. It's clear they're talking about Jay Berhalter.
Yes.
It seems like the general population of US soccer employees, their life would be more miserable. They would be less motivated in their jobs if Jay Berhalter is appointed CEO. Those are enough reasons to not appoint him.
They certainly are. Can I tell you my theory? I want to run my theory by you, and you tell me what you make of it. Genuinely, I welcome you to say, like, no, that can't be the case.
Do you though?
I really do. I'm wondering
right.
what you think. Because I'm aware that my feelings on U.S. soccer tend to fluctuate with my mood right now because they're so erratic that it makes me feel like, well, I don't really know if I trust them. And then sometimes I'm like, well, maybe it's not that bad. But I do wonder if maybe there was sort of already that conversation maybe a year ago that it would be Jay Berhalter as CEO.
Yeah.
But then things have been so bad and there has been so much bad PR that they have been sort of quietly delaying that announcement, and I think waiting until there was either a lack of attention or a lack of eyes on U.S. soccer or maybe some positive swings to then say, hey, we're going to do this.
Friday afternoon announcement after something else has got the national attention.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I then wonder if some of this stuff, like the Glassdoor announcements that all were sort of suddenly there, at least to my mind, it wasn't a slow accumulation. It was like there's just a few negative reviews.
It was definitely a concerted effort on the part of U.S. soccer employees to make sure that this information was out there.
And I wonder if that is part of it, that there's an awareness that it's probably going to be Jay Berhalter, and we want this to stay in the public consciousness that that's not a good idea. And so that's where you're seeing some of that stuff. Why it keeps finding its way to be front and center is that I think maybe
Tab Ramos is playing this part here. I think he's obviously not been quoted saying bad things about people who are in charge at US Soccer Federation while he was employed by them. It's no coincidence that now he's left US Soccer, he can say stuff like this to a journalist.
So I guess my feeling / theory is maybe that there has been a handshake agreement in place for a while, and that's why you're not hearing much about what the actual search is or who they're actually talking to or who's been interviewed. It's just a lot of we're looking into it. We're doing an extensive search.
Here's a more optimistic version. I think that was what was going on. There was sort of the natural successor appeared to be Jay Berhalter, but I think maybe a combination of the Glassdoor reviews and other pushback might mean that now they're starting a search for someone else. And maybe the reason it's taken so long is that they didn't go look in to begin with because they thought they had their man in-house, right?
Yep.
But now they're like, oh, it can't be him. We've got to find someone else.
Maybe
there's an internal power struggle where somebody's saying, okay, I want it to be not Jay Berhalter, I want it to be someone else. And they're saying, well, find the someone else. And they're frantically panicking for the someone else that will satisfy everybody to not be Jay Berhalter and be an acceptable CEO.
In my mind,
sounds super organized, right?
I think the main criteria of not being Jay Berhalter is not being named Jay Berhalter. So that rules out a few people. I'm guessing. I'm guessing there's multiple.
They're looking for an acceptable alternative. Yeah,
I hope that's the case.
Again, Richard Branson, he's free.
Yeah, get him in there.
As long as he can he can hot air balloon in and out of Chicago at will. He'll be happy.
Maybe they'll set up Soccer HQ on his private island, and then that will be an alluring spot for people to go work. It could work out.
Go.
My fear is just that. I hope that's the case. My fear is that U.S. soccer exists in such a vacuum that there may be a lack of awareness or a feeling of it'll blow over. It's CEO. People don't really know. Whatever. And then that ends up happening. So I will be frustrated, but maybe that's a conversation for if and when that occurs.
Well, let's see who is appointed CEO. So the other noteworthy quote from this article is Dave Vandenberg, former youth national team coach, who when he was told about it is an edict, right, that they're saying that any youth national team coaches have to relocate to Chicago so we can have lots of meetings and lots of communication. Here's the Vandenberg quote. I immediately said, that's not going to happen.
Yep.
First First off, I don't see the benefit because we're never there. There's no field in Chicago. For 6 months of the year, you can't be in Chicago because of the weather. That last bit's a bit harsh. People live there year-round, and it's a very good city. But I understand he's basically saying that it's not worth, whatever benefits there are of being in the same city, it's not worth making everybody relocate to Chicago. And I would like to think that someone at US Soccer, maybe the new CEO when they come in, will look at this and think, okay, that was an interesting idea, but the only coach we've appointed since laying that down is Rafael Vicky, the U17 coach. He didn't do well at the World Cup. We've lost loads of coaches like Vandenberg who were just not interested in relocating to Chicago. Yep. We've kind of, sort of ruined our coaching infrastructure with this diktat from the top. Maybe we should roll it back.
I mean, that would be ideal. I would have no problem with that because I agree with you that it's not 6 months you can't live there. But I would say when we were in Chicago in late January, early February last year, we didn't go outside. Sky Bridges connected everything.
Yeah.
We went from our hotel to the convention center and back. I think the one time we went outside, we went into the closest restaurant possible because we no longer wanted to be in the air.
But look, I mean, Chicago is a great city.
True.
Right? It is cold a lot of the year. But even if it was like a perfect utopian paradise, even if it was Richard Branson's island, you shouldn't make it a condition of being a coach for US Soccer that you have to live there. These people have families, right? These people have families, and their husband or wife has a job where they're settled. Their kids are in school. So you're telling them either you've got to leave your family and come and live in Chicago, or you've got to relocate your entire family to Chicago. You're setting up a massive barrier to someone being a youth national team coach, and you're thinning out the pool by removing all the people who aren't willing to do that. I'll leave you with the final line from the article. Is from April Heinrichs. She was the women's youth technical director. No longer, but she was. Quote, I think it has to be a concern for our community that we haven't replaced youth national team coaches since March of 2018.
Yep.
That's how long this has been going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's
argument from you. Right?
No, because I think the thing is, there was nothing really, the Tab Ramos wanted to have a goalkeeper training camp or whatever. That was, newly...
Development program.
That was newly specific information. Yeah. But most of this is stuff we already knew.
Yeah.
It's just sort of bringing it back up and sort of pulling the Band-Aid off again or reopening the wound a little bit. And so it's more yep, it's a reminder of things are not good more than anything bombshell news, things that we had no idea were even happening and how much worse it is. It's just
it's more getting Tab Ramos on the record about Jay Berhalter's overreach into technical areas, and it's about a former youth national team coach Vandenberg going on the record and saying, I left my job because I didn't want to move to Chicago.
Yeah.
So we've got it on the record now of staff disagreeing with how US Soccer was being run.
Yeah.
It's a step forward.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I'm bummed out.
Yeah,
I'm bummed out. Can we move on to happier things? Let's talk listener questions.
Let's talk listener
shall
questions
we?
instead.
And move away from US Soccer and cold Chicago.
All right, we have 11 listener questions.
By the way, I do love Chicago. I want to throw that out there.
You backpedaling.
I know, man. We every time I have been to Chicago, I fully enjoyed it. Just the idea of especially if you're living in Texas and you've got your life there and it is warmer there, to be told nope, you have to move to Chicago, uproot everything. I would not love being told I have to go to a place.
And you have to drink a shot of Malort every morning.
Ew.
First of today's listener questions comes from Greg Slater. Greg Slater wants to know, what does COP mean, K-O-P, at football grounds in England? I know end is used more generally, like Stretford End or Holt End. Is COP a synonym?
Not really.
No.
I guess, no. COP is... the simplest way to put it, I guess, is a slang term for a single-tier stand, which used to be all standing, usually located behind a goal.
You sound like you're reading that from somewhere.
It's my notes. I got it right here. Yeah.
Okay, here's where COP comes from. It comes from Spion Kop, or maybe Spion Kop, which is a mountain, or at least a large hill.
It's a hill.
In South Africa.
It translates to Spy Hill.
And it all comes back to the Battle of Spion Kop, which was in one of the Boer Wars, I believe the Second Boer War. In 1900, it was one of the most important battles of the Boer Wars, and it's basically just this big old hill, right? So that when a lot of people...
Very steep hill.
Very steep, that's it, yeah. The key is that it's steep. So when a lot of these soldiers came back, they obviously had this reference to the Kop, this big hill that was a big part of their lives. So when football grounds started having steep hills at one side of the stadium, they would start calling it the Kop. It's simple as that, right? There's a famous steep hill, famous steep hills in stadiums, so you start calling it in slang terms the Kop. But Anfield, where there's the famous Kop, was the first to officially change the name to the Kop in 1928.
I think there was like an unofficial Cup before that or something like that. But
there was a reference to a newspaper reference to Woolwich Arsenal's manor ground.
I couldn't remember if it was Arsenal or somebody else.
Yeah,
Arsenal. There we go.
A journalist said that the new embankment looks like the Cup.
Right.
Yeah.
And as I understand, this came from the Liverpool Echo, so maybe there's
this
a little bit.
This is the 1906 reference to the new Cup at Anfield.
Yes,
yeah.
But I believe also in that the Battle of Spion Kop, or was it Battle? Cool.
Yep.
That it was also primarily, I guess, like people from Liverpool. There was like a regiment from Liverpool.
Oh, I didn't know
it was
that.
a lot of Liverpudlian soldiers who came back, but also a lot of Liverpudlian soldiers who died. So I think it was also like an homage to this hill where these men fought. It is, I guess, reminiscent of that because it's so steep and there are so many people there.
Yeah.
It was a reminder of that specifically, I guess.
So that's where the Cup comes from. There was no way to guess that, right, without researching it?
Absolutely not.
K-O-P.
Because I kind of assumed it was slang for something, and then it was like it's slang in terms of that's what everybody calls it. The other thing I would say is I don't know this to be the case, but if I were guessing, I'm assuming ends, like Stretford End, is because that's a multi-tier. Like you've got one above it, I'm guessing, that like a single tier thing.
I think it's as simple as just two ends to a ground.
Yeah.
You can be like, in this room we're in, there's this end and there's that end, right? There's the window end that you're sitting by, and there's the door end that I'm sitting by.
Don't they call it the Cop End? Or is it just
no,
the
it's
Cop?
just the Cop.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And normally it's named after the street that's like nearby. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. Next question comes from Andy Jordan. Could Christian Pulisic one day win the Ballon d'Or? What say you, Taylor Rockwell?
I mean, first of all, the easy answer to this is like, sure, anyone could if they're a professional player, if they rise to the occasion. I think part of the reason why I have like such a weird time answering this is because of the dominance of Ronaldo and Messi.
Yep.
And it's this idea that like, well, it's only one of two players who will ever win it, or it creates this idea that like one player wins it consistently.
Yeah.
I had to go look that I guess from 1990 to 2007, it was never won consecutively.
Yep.
Like some people won it multiple times, but not consecutively.
We're just living in a weird era of
Yes.
Messi, Ronaldo, Ronaldo, maybe Modric, then Messi again.
Right.
Modric is the only person that's pierced that Messi, Ronaldo barrier for the last, I actually don't know how long. It's about 10 years or more.
Mm-hmm. And then if you look at, at 2000, like I said, I think 2007 is when those two stopped winning it.
12 years.
Started winning it, basically, yeah.
So before that, it could be Kaká, it could be Zidane, it could be Rivaldo, it could be Ronaldinho. There was a time when, usually an attacking player, it was Cannavaro one year, right? Probably 2006 after the World Cup win.
There's always like weird outliers, yeah.
Yeah, but there was a time when it was just
Mateus as well.
Whoever was the best attacking player that year.
Right.
Michael Owen won it. Michael Owen won the Ballon d'Or.
Shevchenko as well. And I think, and I say that to say, like, yes, these are all very good footballers, and Michael Owen. But it's also like there are definitely some fad players thrown in there of like,
or just someone who has a great season.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
I guess that's what I should say, not fad, but like a player who caught fire for this one season. Like, whoa, they finished second. What happened to who's this person? I don't even know.
And
them.
here's the thing: now that can happen. Virgil van Dijk can have a great season, a great season, win the Champions League, be the outstanding defender, maybe argue the outstanding player. But then you still look at Leo Messi and the things he's done and be like, oh yeah, that was the best player in the world this year. So yeah, I think once we get out of the Messi-Ronaldo era, then assuming it can start being multiple players winning it, I'm guessing like Kylian Mbappe will win it at some point. Maybe Eden Hazard. Do we think in the post-Messi-Ronaldo era, Christian Pulisic is at least a contender for a Ballon d'Or?
I mean, no, right now, I guess is what I would say. And so the way I chose to look at it was like with the idea that there tends to be a lot of fluctuation in who wins it, at least historically. I looked at it more so as like, what would he need to do, like very generally? And my two qualifications were like, become unquestionably the best player at Chelsea. That it's sort of like, that is his team, he is dominated. Because to your point about Virgil van Dijk, I've heard the argument and I sort of agree that like because everybody is really into Liverpool this year, because they've had such a good couple seasons, that everybody wanted to give it to somebody on Liverpool, but the vote was kind of split between a little bit Mane, even though I think he wasn't even in the shortlist in the end, but Salah was in there, Van Dijk. And so I think you have to have...
It's pronounced Van Dijk.
Excuse me, I apologize. But you have to have at least one player, like I think you have to have that player who stands head and shoulders above the team to separate a little bit. That's one. Number two, I think...
6'4".
That we, who, Van Dijk?
Yeah,
I was going to say Pulisic is definitely not 6'4". And the other one would be, I think he would have to do stuff with the United States.
Yes.
That I don't think you can have a player like Lionel Messi. Yes, Argentina don't win, but they're still Argentina.
Okay, so I think what you're arguing is that essentially Christian Pulisic will have to get a lot better if he wants to win the Ballon d'Or, and I think I agree with you. But I do think it's possible that like a 26-year-old Christian Pulisic is the best player on Chelsea. We see flashes of it, right? We see flashes of it right now. So extrapolating it out into the future, there is a possibility that he has one stellar season with Chelsea or someone else. It'd probably have to be a World Cup year, right? Where the United States makes the quarterfinals and he's the absolute star of the show for the United States. That's what it would take, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a Champions League win with his club where he's the star player and a standout tournament with the United States. It's possible. It's just probably not that likely.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Because he's going to be in the Kylian Mbappe era.
That is the shorter answer. It's probably not. But
I just realised once Mbappe leaves PSG,
Yep.
he could go supernova, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We could live in a Mbappe winning it every year kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, and we would expect France to continue to be pretty good. So
Better
then if
than the US,
France continue to do things and then Mbappe continues to rise, I'm going to do something that...
Eden Hazard's not done yet either.
There's that too.
Yeah.
We'll see how Real Madrid go. I'm going to do something now that sort of drives me nuts when other podcasts do it, but I'm going to do it here. Can you remind me off air that I have a question for you about this question?
Yes.
All right. We'll talk about it later. But right now, we're going to talk about...
that won't be recorded. That would just be a private conversation.
Pretty much.
Okay.
I just want to remember it because I often mean to bring stuff up afterwards and then I forget. Nothing bad. But
Can I tweet about it?
Sure, you can,
right.
if you choose. Corey Ocular, meantime, asks, are we being too harsh on Berhalter for having his quote-unquote group? Haven't other USMNT coaches had the same criticism? I remember, says Corey, being frustrated at Robbie Finley with Bob Bradley and Julian Green, Mix Diskerud, and Timmy Chandler with Jurgen Klinsmann, always getting call-ups. Is Berhalter any worse than prior managers?
So before we answer this question, I would take issue with who Corey has chosen as his example.
My first bullet point in my response is I disagree with the premise.
Yeah, well, so
some of the premise.
Robbie Finley wasn't always called up by Bob Bradley.
Charlie Davies got injured, and they wanted a
pacey striker.
Yeah.
Okay, but Bob Bradley did have, let's say, Ricardo Clark.
That is a very good one.
Who was always called up.
We were even in the moment why is this happening? Start Maurice Edu.
So I think you can argue that certain coaches have their favourite players. Corey just chose the wrong one.
How has Omar Gonzalez been that player for 3 different national team coaches?
With Klinsmann, there's definitely something happened with Julian Green, right? Whereas choose the US and
I will forever believe that it was choose us and you're guaranteed a spot.
Yeah, I'll send you to the World Cup. I'll let you try and score in the round of 16.
This is me scratching
I'll
out
give you
Landon
5 minutes in the round of 16.
I'm going to scratch out Landon Donovan's name to write in your name. That's what I can guarantee you.
Mixed Diskerud for sure, right? He was often in the squad, even when he wasn't playing well.
Yeah.
He went to that World Cup in 2014, wore the number 10 shirt, only sat on the bench.
But again, with Mix, and this is maybe semantics, being pedantic, whatever, but he got his first cap under Bob Bradley. So it's not necessarily as though that was just a guy that came through.
Yeah, but he got a lot more caps under Jurgen Klinsmann.
Right, but it factors into how I have chosen to answer this question, is all I'm trying to say.
So therefore it's true.
Well, no, just more so that Mix may have been a guy that Jurgen Klinsmann called in and we were sort of confused by, but it is not as though he was only given a chance under Jurgen Klinsmann and everybody else were no, thank you.
That's fair. Other coaches rated him enough to call him up. That is fair.
That's fair. My point.
But to the broad version of Corey's question, all national team coaches have favoured players that they see a reason to keep calling up when the general public doesn't.
Right.
So in that sense, I would agree with the idea that maybe it is too harsh on Greg Berhalter to keep doing this. And I'd even say Greg Berhalter has more reason than other coaches to keep doing it because he's got his patterns of play, his movements, his OA movements that he's teaching these players. And so when he talks about the group, he's talking about players who have been in sessions and been taught the patterns of play and the principles of play more than the players who have been outside of, quote unquote, the group. I think it's also unfortunate that I think we picked up on it essentially that Berhalter started using the term the group in press conferences and essentially accidentally calling attention to the fact that he has a favoured group of players, right?
I kind of agree with what you're saying, and then I kind of disagree simultaneously. Because, yes, I think all national team managers tend to have players that they like, that they call in.
Yeah.
And that, become the core of their squad. I also think it is slightly harsh on Greg Berhalter because I think right now the U.S. player pool is, despite having some top-tier players or some very good players, it is very weak in a lot of ways. And so I think in the past, when you looked at the 16 or 17 guys that were the group for other managers, it was a deeper team. They were it was Clint Dempsey playing for Fulham or playing for Tottenham. You had more of those sort of that guy's obviously.
Well, no one ever quibbled with that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think with this group, where some of these guys are in their careers or who he's chosen to bring in, it's less of a Clint Dempsey at Tottenham and more Daniel Lovitz. And I think that is part of it. But where I disagree with
you... You're right about the depth. Who are the other left-backs? You know what I'm saying? It's maybe Anthony Robinson, who's with the U23s, and then you're kind of struggling after that, right?
Yeah.
So it may not be Berhalter's fault. It's more make the pool of left-backs' fault.
But I do think that pool, that group for other managers, isn't necessarily established after, like, literally the first camp he held, or that manager held, when most of the players, or a lot of his players, were not even eligible to play in that camp.
Yeah.
And that is where some of my frustration comes from, is it feels like the first players he kind of got experience with somehow became the core for him for at least a good long while. And it usually takes a little bit longer, is I guess my feeling, that it's after a year that core is established, and it's been through a lot of experimentation. You find the kind of constants, you build around those constants, then you build around those constants, and then you have that core.
Your Penelopes.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas this one feels a bit less like that and more like, here are the guys who initially fit, and then I've kind of added and subtracted as I needed to.
Yeah, I would argue it's not as bad as people think either, because we argue about Dwayne Holmes, right? He's the standout, like maybe Christian Roldan over Dwayne Holmes type thing. But definitely, like, Alfredo Morales is someone who has been added later to the group. And Georgi Mihailovic has been someone who has definitely played his way out of the group, right? And it's only really guys like, say, Christian Roldan that people have questions about. And Daniel Lovitz definitely, who is still... Christian Roldan's the only one where you could say there is competition from other probably better players who should be there instead. I'd say it's not as many players as people think.
I mean, I think probably people would add Jesse Zardes to that. I'm not sure if I agree.
Yeah.
I think people would add Will Trapp to that, and I would disagree a little bit.
And Will Trapp's been phased out, right? Because Jackson Ewell has
he just still gets
him.
called in, and that's where I think there's... And I guess that's what I mean, is like it's not really helping Greg Berhalter with that. Like, I understand he likes Will Trapp. He has a relationship with Will Trapp. Will Trapp can do certain things, I'm guessing, in training. But it's still...
He's learned how to spell the name.
But again,
one L.
Exactly.
One L,
I finally
2 Ps.
figured it out. But like, it just doesn't look that good when a guy who hasn't been playing is still getting called into the team. He's not playing, but he's still in that squad. It feels like that speaks to, but maybe he will one day be relied upon if the situation requires, and I don't love that as much.
But do you think Berhalter is doing this to a larger degree than any other former coach? Which is essentially the essence of Corey's question.
I think he's doing it faster than a lot of other coaches, and I think that's where my issue is that usually, that's what I'm saying, is like usually it's after a year you can sort of look and see like, oh, okay, this is what they have honed their squad into, their core of their squad, and I feel like that happened after the first January camp.
All right, counterpoint though, is it just that we've started complaining earlier? Like maybe you could look back and maybe Klinsmann was doing that early on and Bradley was doing it early on and Arena did it early on, but we just didn't start complaining about it so early.
I mean, I think, but I think I would argue that that's like the same thing, basically. Or like, basically it's two sides of the same coin, I guess. That like, yes, it's because things are bad, but the argument then is like, but they haven't been playing well, so why are you sticking with this same core of people as opposing to seeing what else happens?
And then the bigger philosophical thing is Berhalter's saying, I'm sticking with the same core of people because we're all learning together and progressing together, right? That's the fundamental philosophical difference between what Berhalter wants to do and what the fan base wants to do. Yeah.
Yep.
And we'll continue that in 2020.
We certainly will.
Many more questions to get to. But first, today's show is sponsored by Hello Fresh.
Do you have I'm jumping in. Do you have your own like group of core ingredients that you always use? You don't really change it up.
They need freshening up?
Yeah, all of the fans of your cooking have starred to ask questions about why turnips are always in there.
Why do you use so much Roldan?
Right.
We don't need Lovitz seasoning on everything.
Why are you only using one type of cheese? There are so many other cheeses out there. HelloFresh makes cooking delicious meals at home a reality regardless of your comfort in the kitchen, and they make it easy to use new ingredients and different ingredients in different ways and different combinations that you might otherwise have experienced.
So you get sent in a box pre-measured ingredients for different meals, and then you get step-by-step recipes which will teach you how or show you how to use those ingredients. It's like if Dwayne Holmes came in a box and there was a set of instructions that said he can play number 8, he can play number 10, just let him run around.
But you get 3 different meals in the box. So like maybe in that one box he's a number 8, maybe in that one box he's a number 10, maybe in that other box Christian Roldan is included. But because of the variety, it makes it okay. See what I'm doing here? It's an extended analogy, Daryl.
I do see what you're doing. So you can break out of your dinner rut with HelloFresh's 20-plus seasonal chef-curated recipes each week. There is something for everyone, from family recipes to calorie-smart and vegetarian, and fun menu series like Hall of Fame and craft burgers. I have recently moved away from the vegetarian menus. Turns out meat tastes good.
It sure does. I have a flank steak marinating right now. I'm very excited about it.
I'll be around at 7.
That's fine.
We can talk about that thing you wanted to talk about.
There we go.
Whatever it may be.
That's perfect. But while we wait for that, we should say for a limited time, our listeners can get 9 free meals with HelloFresh. Go to HelloFresh.com/TSS9 and enter the promo code TSS9. That's TSS the letters and then the number 9.
And if you can't remember it, think, what number does Giassizades wear?
That's the
So
one.
it's 9 free meals, HelloFresh.com/TSS9 and enter the code TSS9.
Thank you very much to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's episode. This is indicative of my dietary habits or the way I like to eat food. I'm going to say Christian Pulisic, if he were an ingredient, he's salt. He's the thing that you need just in case things aren't going well. It makes everything just a little bit better.
Oh, okay.
That's how I feel about
in terms
salt.
of how you feel about the US men's national team.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Okay, next question comes from Michael Jackson. I'm going to say not that one. Michael Jackson
and
asks,
if it is, shame on you.
Michael, but well done for being resurrected. Why don't
Less
people...
so the other stuff.
Yeah, less so the other stuff. Why don't people mention Juan Pablo Angel more as being one of the true elite players to help build Major League Soccer? So people don't remember, Juan Pablo Angel came from Aston Villa, signed as a designated player for New York Red Bulls all the way back in 2007. Scored a bunch of goals.
And I think that date is key as to why we don't remember him as much. He was signed in April of 2007. David Beckham announced to be going to the Galaxy in January of 2007. And I think that is a huge part of it, is that David Beckham...
one of them is David Beckham.
Right. And I do think, like, you look at Juan Pablo Angel's record with New York, and it's very good in terms of his individual performance. I can't remember...
numbers, 58 goals in 102 games for New York Red Bulls.
Thank you, because I was going to be way off, not in the percentages, but in the actual numbers.
Yep.
So
you've got to think about what MLS was like in 2007. I do remember, because I'd been here a couple of years, watching Angel be so much better than the defenders who were marking him. He would outthink them with just little, like, fake to the near post, go to the far post stuff. He just looked like basically too good for the league. It looked a little too easy for him. There's also the fact that New York Red Bulls didn't win any trophies while he was there.
Did you look up what they did win, the one award he won? It's my favorite thing ever.
I mean, I know they went to the 2008 MLS Cup and lost to Columbus Crew. I know that, but what trophy did he win?
If they won something that year, if they went to MLS Cup,
they won the Western Conference.
They won the Western Conference.
So I looked at this and it's only just dawned on me that the New York Red Bulls are not in the West.
They're not. It was that thing, I think, where it was like whichever, because they had uneven teams, it was like whichever 2 teams were the best in the remaining got sent into the other bracket or whatever, whichever team. Yeah.
So that means they didn't have a great regular season then, right? They're almost like a NFL-style wild card entrance into the Western Conference.
Right. And so I think you're absolutely right, though, that being the only thing they won, it means that you don't have that sort of like, well, he did win MLS Cup for New York, so that matters.
Yeah.
Whereas Beckham obviously goes on to win plenty of silverware. And then it's also the case.
Right? Eventually,
true.
Yeah.
But it's also the case that Juan Pablo Angel, after New York, it doesn't really go that well.
He goes to the Galaxy?
He goes to the Galaxy on I think he was like maybe re-entry or not re-entry, but waiver, basically. He was waived by New York. He gets picked up by the Galaxy, who then...
they waved at him.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, he made 22 appearances, scored only 3 goals, so form falling off there. Then they trade him to Chivas to make space for Robbie Keane. And I think right there is another key point about why he is less remembered. Because
so he petered out in Major League Soccer.
Basically. And then by the end, it's like you can't really claim him as like a legend, like this guy who was so formative when it was being traded for Robbie Keane.
There's also, frankly...
Who's excellent, don't get me wrong, but that's my point. Is like we don't think of Robbie Keane as necessarily a legend of Major League Soccer.
I do. I think he's brilliant.
I think he's brilliant, but I don't think he's in that, like, I hesitate to use this term because it's a Bill Simmons thing, but like that Mount Rushmore of MLS, I don't know if he's on there. I think Beckham definitely is.
I think he's at least in the foothills.
Okay. That'd be fine. I could put him there.
But here's the thing. Juan Pablo Angel, when he came here, he came from Aston Villa, right? He is not coming from Manchester United or Real Madrid like David Beckham did. His profile was not as high to begin with. He was an excellent footballer. He was a Premier League footballer. But it's not sort of this... just because he's not coming from a superstar team, it's not so groundbreaking. So that's part of the reason why he's not remembered as famously as, say, David Beckham.
I would agree with all that.
Right.
I think we've answered it. Richard Rolson then asks, do you think the application of VAR in the EPL has been rougher than in other leagues? And if so, why do you think this has happened?
It has been rougher in terms of everyone's reaction to it. And I think a big part of this is just the way people in English football react to everything, both fans and media.
Okay.
While I was home, I was listening to... my dad always has Talk Sport on in the morning, which is exactly what it sounds like, right? It's talk radio about sport. And they were constantly banging on about how VAR is ruining the game and this and that. It all gets very emotional. And I think anytime something goes against a big English team, the fan base is all up in arms. It's kind of happened at least once to every team, right? So every fan base has a reason to hate VAR or has been like overreacted to a result that went against them because a VAR decision went against them. I think that's a big part of it. But I think you were talking earlier about like a way it's been implemented that may play a role in this.
Yeah, I think the reason why I don't disagree with you, and I think VAR, whenever it's brought in, whenever any new rule is brought in, there's always going to be that initial like, this is so dumb. Why is this happening?
In England, any new rule, any new anything that's brought in gets debated to death because you can literally sell newspapers on the back of it, and I mean that literally as well, because it'll be on the back pages of national newspapers to get people to buy it, and it will command radio time on places like TalkSport.
But there was negativity. Like I remember reading negativity about it in the Bundesliga when it's brought in Serie A when it's brought in. That feels, at least to me, like it has faded. I think a big part of the reason why it's still front and center in the Premier League, not necessarily, I think you're absolutely right, that it's like it's an easy thing to hit, it's an easy talking point for talking heads to do.
There's just so much more English media. It's endless.
But I think a big problem for me is that you still do not have Premier League officials going to look at the screen themselves. Okay. And I think because of that, it feels like, wait, who is in charge of this? Are they actually allowed to overturn? Is there any time when a referee is like, and it feels like the exception rather than the rule that referees are overturning their decisions? Yeah. And even, again, from like I think I've said optics twice now in this show, but from an optics standpoint.
It's the word of the day.
We were at the, we were at the Bayern Munich Frankfurt game when Frankfurt won 5-1. And the very, first 10 minutes or so, it's the Boateng sending off when there's the red card. Referee sprints to midfield, looks at the monitor, sprints back, red card comes out. But that probably takes as long, that sequence took as long as it would in the Premier League. The difference is that it's the referee running, the camera's following him. Now it's the referee looking at a screen and we're seeing some replays. Then it's the referee running back and what's going to happen. Whereas in the Premier League, it's a referee standing there with his finger in his ear while a bunch of people scream at him. And it's just sort of like, why hasn't he made a decision? What's happening right now? And we're not seeing him look at a thing. We're not seeing what he's looking at or what's being reviewed.
Yeah, he's not looking at anything, right? It's people in that central, I can't remember where it is, but there's a centralized location where they're looking at it and they're telling him whether there's been a clear and obvious error that needs to be overruled. And
so from even a very basic standpoint, like because you don't have that screen there, or because it's not being shown, like the Dele Alli potential handball from midweek against United, like
from his goal, right?
They were sort of initially there was this like, well, what are they looking? Was it offside? Like there's a moment of like, what, we don't quite know. Yeah. And again, if you have the referee looking at the screen, even if your replays aren't queued up yet, you can see like, oh, it's a handball. Oh, that's what he's looking at. Like you can sort of see it more clearly. It gets to the point much more quickly than the referee standing with his finger in the ear while somebody tells him stuff.
But when we're watching this on TV, we're shown what's being looked at, right? Because they show the replays of Ali lifting the ball and it like brushing his shoulder, so we know.
Yes, but I think you always have that moment of like, oh, there's a VAR check. Hold on. Like I think initially there's a lack of awareness. Now maybe that is the commentators not paying attention or not being like as up on it right away. It may also be that they're in the booth and so they don't quite see the hold on. There's a graphic on here saying replay or whatever. But I just think if you had them running to the screen, it immediately shows you like, oh, okay, there's a VAR check taking place, then we can figure it out.
Why did the Premier League decide not to do that? Is it because it was perceived that maybe going to the monitor takes too much time?
Yeah, maybe.
So they're trying to preemptively fix a problem and maybe created another problem in doing so. I feel like we've had this conversation before.
I think we have, and I think Ryan and I have as well. One of the possible explanations.
Yeah.
One of the possible explanations I can see is that
on the weekend VAR review show.
I mean, you say that. Like, dude, you have missed some moments when VAR was wrong. Like, when VAR straight up got it wrong.
VAR wasn't wrong. The referees were wrong.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it still is the VAR overturning something, overruling something. Okay. But we can get into that later. But I actually forgot what I was going to say. So never mind.
We're talking about the referees running to the monitor. Why the Premier League decided not to do that.
All I can figure is that because it's a very visible sign of the referee being overruled, and I think the stated objective, or at least one of the things that was kind of repeated a lot in the beginning when it was implemented in the Premier League, was we don't want VAR to overrule, we don't want them officiating the games, the officials are still in charge.
But surely if the ref actually goes and looks for himself, he gets to make the decision rather than the decision appearing in his ear.
Yeah, I think that is what we've stumbled upon now. I think at the time it was more of a like that allows him to have a quieter conversation with like, yeah, no, I saw that. So this is me doing my impression of like finger in the ear, like I saw that. Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm not going to overrule that. Yeah. Like it allows him to sort of like shut them down faster, I'm guessing. But in the end, you're right.
Rather than making him go and look at it.
Right. But in the end, it actually looks like he's being told by Big Brother, like, hey, you missed this. We're going back and looking at it now. We'll tell you if it's wrong.
We're going to put the rat on your face again unless you go look at it.
That would be an alternative punishment. Yeah. It'd be interesting.
All right. Next question comes from Kareem Rahemtullah. Rahemtullah wants to know...
Kareem, I don't think we're friends.
What is the most festive starting 11 you can make in the Christmas tree formation? So if people don't know the Christmas tree formation, it's goalkeeper, then it's 4-3-2-1, so that it looks like a Christmas tree. Kareem, we are friends. Thank you for asking this question.
I have a few. I have an incomplete squad, banking on the fact that you would have. I knew you would. I knew you would. Who's your goalkeeper?
Pepe Reindeer.
Yeah, that. I'm right there with you.
Is that the same?
Pepe Reindeer Reina.
Brilliant.
Defenders is where I struggled. I only have two, one of whom is retired.
Okay, do you want to hear who are your defenders?
Ashley Cole, for Cole in your stocking.
Okay.
And Danny Alves.
Excuse me?
Yeah, Danny Alves, but I'm changing his name to Danny Elvis.
Oh, Danny Elves.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, here's my back four. Centre-backs are Per Mertesacker.
Oh, boy.
The other centre-back is Fabinho Ho-Ho.
That was
right
good.
back is Hector Jingle Bellerin. And left back is Greg Berhalter.
I don't understand how you do these so quickly, but I'm impressed and saddened all at once.
Should we move to midfield?
You haven't physically hurt me yet, so that's good.
Okay, we're getting there. So now we have a line of three midfielders, right? Three central midfielders in the 4-3-2-1.
I mean,
who you got?
Santi Cazorla, I'm pretty sure picks himself. Come on, Santa.
You got to go Santa Cazorla.
Okay, that's fine. If you want to do that,
Cazorla.
In that case, if we're going to change some names around,
of course we
are. Jonathan Nog instead of Jonathan Hogg.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yep. And then here's my other one that I thought you would appreciate: Davy Proper of Brighton. Do you want to know why?
Why?
I looked it up. He's Dutch. His full name is David Petrus Wenceslaus Proper.
All right.
So he is Good King Davy Wenceslaus for purposes of this one.
Beautiful. My other two midfielders to go alongside Santa Cazorla are Frankincense Lampard. And brace yourself for this one. You're going to hate this one.
Yeah.
Adam Tra-la-la-la-la-la-la-la-nya.
That's your best one.
That's my best one.
That's your best one.
All right.
You think Greg Berhalter is better than that one? Get out of here.
Well, I find the reach for the pun to be charming.
I see. I
Greg
understand.
Berhalter.
I tried desperately to find somebody that would allow Krampus to work. I wanted Krampus in here. I couldn't really make it work, except for like Van de Campus, who's like a retired Dutch player. That doesn't really work so much.
So 4-3-2-1. Now we have our two attacking midfielders.
I've only got one, and it's Gabriel Jesus.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could go like Jesus Navas and Gabriel Jesus to get the double Jesuses.
I think you really need to go with someone like Dele Holly.
Oh, my God.
Or,
oh, my God. That one hurt.
Or, brace yourself for this one. Sebastian Leggett Snow.
All right, that's pretty good again. It's good. It's good. It flows. That one's nice.
And then, of course, top of the tree, it's got to be Juan Pablo Angel.
I thought about that one. I went with Andy Carroll.
Andy Carroll. Oh, that's beautiful.
There we go.
So you can switch either of those.
I don't know how you did yours. The way I work when it comes to puns is I just made my list of like Christmas holiday things.
Yeah.
And then just tried to shoehorn in as many things as I could. And I was like, caroling. Oh, that one's the first one.
So Kareem had suggested Alexander 5 gold rings. The New York City player, Alexander Ring.
Thank you.
That's pretty good, right? And then I had guest of honor, Gabriel Jesus.
Okay, all right.
Rather than making him play.
No manager for you?
No manager. Oh.
I don't know why have I invited this?
Yeah, sorry. I didn't think of one.
Carlo Angelotti?
Perfect.
There we go.
Perfect.
I hate myself.
Absolutely perfect. All right.
Pep Guardiola, la 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 la.
Speaking of the holidays, today's show is sponsored by Talisman Caps.
That is right.
Which I believe would make a perfect gift for Christmas.
Dude, that is a good call.
Yeah. Or whichever non-Christian holiday you're celebrating that involves gift giving.
Also that one too. Because they are the purveyors of high-end quality-made caps, but then also accompanying gear. So they've got the vintage vault where they've got like retro jerseys if you want to put a jersey in someone's stocking, but then they've got all of the different apparel and different little things like we always talk about the coffee mugs, the camp mugs. Those are solid. But you've got coasters, you've got cell phone cases. They've really got so many different products that you could use as stocking stuffers.
Yeah, stocking stuffers, but also the caps themselves
also those.
Are $35, which I feel like is, it depends how much money you make, right? But to me, that feels like a good level for a gift. That's a gift that's not just like, here's a $5 thing I found. $35 is like, I love you, I'm going to say
immediate,
not too much money.
I'm saying immediate family or like first cousins that you like. That's where I would put that range.
Yeah,
in
right.
Yeah.
Or you. It's the type of gift I would buy you. Yeah. Right? $35, I think it's the type of gift you would buy me.
I would certainly buy you something from the clearance section.
Harsh.
I mean, I would have agreed with you right up until you said Deli Holly, and now
I've gone down $5.
yes, your gift estimations have dropped.
Well, the good news is you could get 10% off.
Yeah, you could.
When you're shopping for me at talismancaps.com if you use the discount code TOTALSOCCER10. TOTALSOCCER10 for 10% off anything priced $35 or more at talismancaps.com. They right now have a blue CFC cap. So if you've got maybe a recently converted Chelsea fan in your life, because they've been watching Christian Pulisic every Saturday, like say I have, you could get them the Talisman Blues cap for $35, or you get 10% off with Total Soccer 10. Just dropping some hints for you there, Taylor. Just dropping.
You want that hat? You want the Chelsea hat?
Maybe.
All right.
I have a fairly large Talisman collection already.
We both do.
We do, don't we?
So thank you very much to Talisman for that large collection and for sponsoring today's episode. More listener questions. Next one comes from Neil Schuett. Which USMNT player or players, injury or injuries, do you think had the greatest impact on putting us on the path to where the U.S. men's national team is right now?
Ooh, I think the correct answer to this...
Should we say it in unison? Or maybe you've gone different than I have. Who you got?
John Brooks.
Oh, okay.
In terms of the path to right now, if John Brooks had been fit and could have played in 2017 for Bruce Arena, we might not have had Omar Gonzalez scoring that own goal against Trinidad. I think it may have just come down to that game against Trinidad. If John Brooks had been available, maybe that game goes differently.
No, that's the answer. Good call.
Yeah? All right.
No, I mean, I have other answers, but no, I think you're correct in terms of that is the one, because I really struggled with...
The path to right now is the key part.
Exactly,
right?
Players that would have made that difference. And I remembered that, I thought I remembered that Josie Altidore had, missed a lot of the Hex games that had kind of been infrequently involved. He played 7 of them or something like that, or 9 of the 10, I believe.
He and Bobby Wood started that game against Trinidad.
No, he played 9 of 10. I think Josie Altidore is, partially my answer, because I think if he were consistently fit and able to play this year, I think 2019 is a very different year for U.S. soccer. And I think
2014 World Cup, we might have gone further.
Yeah, by the way, I love that I tried to guess. I have it in my notes. He played 9 of the 10 Hex games. So I don't think it would have helped that much with qualifying for Russia, but I do think right now we would have won a few more games in 2019 and things wouldn't have been so bleak.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
And then the only other one, you are absolutely right, that's John Brooks.
In terms of 2019, Tyler Adams. The whole of 2019 might have been different if Tyler Adams was available all the time.
And I do think, I know this is the oldie, but it's the ever-present answer when it comes to injuries, is probably Stu Holden.
Yes.
He just turned 34 in August, so would have been 33, 32.
Yeah.
But we're talking
and
about...
he looks about 28.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we're talking about a creative and technical midfielder who at this point would have almost a decade of Premier League experience, and you have to believe that with Bolton being where they are, he would have gotten a jump to another Premier League team, or maybe he jumps to the Bundesliga or somewhere else. He's probably back in MLS at this point, but it's still a number 10/creative midfielder.
People forget about Stu Holding. Yes, he was creative, but he also had a lot of defensive bite about him. There was a time when
I said number 10, and then I immediately wanted to back off.
There was a time when he led the Premier League in tackles per game when he was playing for Bolton. I think if he'd have been stayed healthy and not had those horror tackles visited upon him, like some horrible ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, he would have been the sort of high energy, tough tackling, but both ways player that could have partnered Michael Bradley, right? Could have really got the best out of Michael Bradley for a few more years. There was Jermaine Jones in the same era. You could have had a midfield of Holden, Jones, and Bradley.
But see, this is the thing. It also then, to me, it means the tactics probably would have been a little bit different, which maybe moved different people to different spots, which maybe makes results go a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one. But then the other thing is just that, I think he was the Bolton Player of the Year, his breakout season. And I just think about how the door
his star shining bright in the Premier League was kind of brief, but really, really visible.
But I think about if that had continued, if he hadn't had those injuries, if that star continued to shine, and maybe he gets a jump to a bigger Premier League club. Because we've had this kind of era of some goalkeepers in the Premier League, but even then they've been moved on, and so Premier League players haven't been that many Americans.
Are you saying our reputation, Americans' reputation in the Premier League would have been higher because Stu Holden would have dragged it higher?
I think so, and I think it opens the door for we can have a creative midfielder from the United States. Let's try that, and I think Pulisic is doing a little bit of that now, but I think maybe Holden would have helped move that along a bit faster.
2 more worth talking about. John O'Brien, obviously, right? 2002 World Cup. If he could have stayed healthy after that, continued that momentum. You can say a lot of the same things we said about Holden in terms of the reputation of Americans. If O'Brien had been sort of part of an Ajax team or maybe another team later on, that's a big name player in Europe for a long time. And then there's just, if he'd been available to play in midfield for the United States after 2002, he went to the
consistently,
he went to the 2006 World Cup, but it was a huge mistake from Bruce Arena. It was just that he loved John O'Brien. O'Brien was not fit to go, right? But if he had been, that's a major piece of the US midfield. Then the other one, is Charlie Davies, right? When you think about the US getting to the final of the Confederations Cup in 2009 and leading Brazil in that final, we nearly had a major FIFA trophy to take home to Soccer House in Chicago.
I forgot it was 2-0. I forgot it was 2-0.
Right? But so we lost to Brazil eventually, but then we were thinking, all right, 2010 World Cup, we can take this sort of somewhat counter-attacking system on the road where you've got everything Josie Altidore can do, including like being a hold-up guy and linking play, the pace of Charlie Davies running behind, and then Donovan and Dempsey on the wings as part of the counter-attack. It was absolutely deadly, but a key part of it was the pace of Charlie Davies.
Yeah.
So he gets injured in the car accident. There isn't really a replacement, and that's why, to Corey's question earlier, that's why Bob Bradley was all in on Robbie Findlay, because he wanted a replacement, pacey player to play the Charlie Davies role. But it turns out Robbie Findlay is not quite as good as Charlie Davies was.
Nah. I remember trying to talk myself into it. No, he was not.
Yeah, and honestly, the 2010 World Cup was kind of glorious anyway because of the Donovan Algeria moment, but I think, so we didn't get past, Ghana in the round of 16. It would have been a better US team with Charlie Davies in it in 2010.
Yes, it would have.
Yeah. Maybe we would have already been qualified by the time of that Algeria game.
Maybe that. Oh, bummers. But yes. But I think you're right in terms of the right now, like the negativity and the lack of Russia, like lack of 2018 World Cup.
The lack of trips to Russia.
Yes. I think John Brooks is probably the answer. If he starts, I have to believe he at least doesn't score that own goal.
And then the 2019 answer is Tyler Adams.
Yep.
Who do we think the 2020 answer will be? Hopefully not still Tyler Adams, right? Back in training with Red Bull. Rasenballsport Leipzig.
Maybe Pulisic? Just that, his first full season in the Premier League, maybe he gets knocked around a little bit. We're not going to have much going on this summer that I can think of.
For the US?
Yeah.
It's only the CONCACAF Nations League finals.
So we're not going to have much going on for the US?
Are we going to have this again?
Yeah, probably.
After the show's over, remind me to talk to you about something.
Okay, cool. Is it about how you're wrong about the CONCACAF Nations League?
It is not. It's the opposite of that.
I mean more so that it's like we don't have a Gold Cup, we don't have a World Cup.
We have World Cup qualifying in September.
So I just think that maybe we don't, maybe this is the summer where he takes off a little bit more or actually gets time off, but maybe he needs that time off.
Okay.
But I guess you could also spin that into, well, he has actual time off, so maybe he won't be him. Maybe he'll be okay with it.
I guess I shouldn't have asked you because we don't know who's going to be injured in 2020.
We don't. Yeah. You're asking me to speculate on terrible things when I'm already sad about U.S. soccer.
Let's knock on wood and say no one.
All right.
The answer is no one.
Let's talk about something else then.
Next question then comes from Robert Cordova. Sometimes I take a gamble and ask a follow-up question. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Yeah.
Robert Cordova.
I noticed that you didn't suggest anybody. You just moved swiftly along.
Tim Ware. Robert Cordova asks, how do you view Samuel Eto'o's career and where does he rank in top African footballers?
All right, so a couple of disclaimers here. I would say, Robert asks us these questions, right? About, what do you think of this person's career? What do you think of that person's career?
He basically asks when they retire. So Eto'o retired in September, officially, after playing for Qatar SC.
There we go. Yeah. And I think I want to be clear up front that, Eto'o never played for a team that I particularly rooted for. That plays a part of my answer. He never reached the level of being an appointment TV sort of player where I was like, I've got to watch
Eto'o's on, I've got to watch this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he was very good, don't get me wrong, but he never reached quite that level.
Yeah.
So I think I probably have a different perspective on Samuel Eto'o than a lot of people, especially Barcelona fans. I'm sure they have much more specific memories. So for me, it's probably less emphatic, but I have three specific things. I will remember him as having a very interesting career in that he played, as you just said, he finished in Qatar, but even before that, he plays for Anji when they first come to be, Anji Mahachkala. He's got Antalyaspor. I think Konyaspor was in there too. So he's got the interesting career route. But then he's also got...
By interesting, do you mean cashing in?
Kind of.
Ever since, from the moment he goes from Inter to Anji, I think there's a lot of just chasing the money. Samuel Eto'o being okay, I'm coming towards the end of my career. I'm going to make as much money as possible in this final few years.
But I kind of don't...
Nothing really wrong with that, but it's not the ideal when you look at the totality of someone's career, right?
Yeah, but I guess to me it is interesting, though, because he lived in all these different places and had different experiences. It's a bit second time in two shows, I think, but it's a bit like Lutz Pfannenstiel, where it's just he played in every confederation. That's nuts. How do you pull that off? So that, to me, is part of it. But then it's also that, aside from that, it's the big clubs that he played for. Madrid, very briefly, but then Barcelona, Inter, Chelsea. So he still has that pedigree about him, and with that comes 3 La Liga titles, a Serie A title, 3 Champions League titles. So I think he has the sort of big game, big club aspect. And then the one that will really, I will forever remember, if you ask me, what is my memory of Samuel Eto'o, it's probably not what he would love, but it's the fact that he's a player who, to me, represents Mourinho at his peak. That a player like Samuel Eto'o, who was fairly didn't really want to change what he was doing at Barcelona, which I think partially explains why he's traded or swapped to Inter.
So after the 2009 Champions League final, which Barcelona will win, it's the Guardiola. It's a front three of Thierry Henry, Samuel Eto'o, Leo Messi.
Goodness gracious.
Not too shabby. But then he's essentially part exchanged for Zlatan Ibrahimovic, right? Sent Eto'o to Inter and Zlatan to Barca.
But then you have him playing as a center forward. You have him playing on the wing. You have him.
Yeah, Mourinho used him on the wing famously, right?
In the second leg against Barcelona.
2010 semi-final.
He's like a wing back or a fullback or an attacking fullback, but at least it's basically Mourinho uses
defensive winger.
Mourinho just utilizing him in different ways, and this is a player who, again, as I remember it, kind of didn't want to do what Guardiola or wasn't as flexible as Guardiola needed him to be. Then again, nor was Zlatan.
I don't fully understand his relationship with Guardiola because Eto'o talks really glowingly about him. Says, he made me understand football in a new way and this and that, but I don't like him.
Yeah.
So it seems like he really respects his football brain, but just doesn't like Guardiola as a person.
Yeah.
But he never really got into why he didn't like him as a person.
Right.
Which is interesting.
So I think for me then, that's maybe where the maybe this connects, maybe it doesn't, but to me it does. That that's where the interesting aspect of his career, that he moved around to lots of different clubs and lots of different places. It is chasing money, but it seems to me but there's also this sure, I'll play defensive wing back if it means I win the Champions League. Why not? It's again the sort of I see it almost as more flexibility from him, that he's yeah, why not? I'll go play in the middle of Turkey. Why not? I'll go play in Qatar. I'll go play in I forget where Anji is, but it's not in a place Dagestan, I think it is.
You live in Moscow.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So I think of Eto'o as lively. I always remember him just being popping up everywhere, running everywhere, really hardworking, but not in a just run kind of way, but more in a I'm going to be here, I'm going to pop up here, I'm going to pop up there, really mobile centre forward. That's the way I remember him. This is without going back and watching footage.
Yeah.
So I haven't watched him play for a long, long time, but that's my memory of Samuel Eto'o. I also seem to remember him not having a dominant foot. I don't remember it get Eto'o on his left foot because it's no good. It seems to be he could finish with both feet. But again, I'd have to go back and watch some footage to really confirm that. So that's my memory of Samuel Eto'o as a player.
I've got two more things before we get to Africa.
Yeah, okay. Because I want to talk about his national team career, which is part of Robert's question.
One of the things I'll say that will, I think he will endure, that will allow Eto'o to endure, is that I think he'll be a good trivia answer for a lot of different stuff. Played in 4 World Cups. That tends to be a thing that people ask about, who played in the most World Cups.
So 98, 2002, 2010, 2014.
I believe that's it.
Okay.
And then played for Real Madrid and Barcelona. That's a rare one. And won the Champions League.
Not a lot for Real Madrid, right?
Not so much. I think 3 games. And then won the Champions League with 2 different clubs. Again, that's another one that is a fairly rare occurrence. Yeah. So I think that, but then I also think to the national team perspective.
Did he win consecutive Champions League with 2 different teams? Because that would be the trivia question. I think he won 2009 Barca, 2010 Inter.
That would make sense. There we go.
So, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. But the thing with the national team, that I also will remember him as one of those players that when you meet people from Cameroon in that era, when I first moved back to Richmond, I played on a team with 2 Cameroonian guys, and if you mentioned, I remember mentioning Rigobert's song, and they would be Rigobert, he's the best, the best, and then you'd mention Samuel Eto'o, and somehow it went up to another level of but he is the best. And it was my kind of first experience with people from that country being oh wow, they really like Samuel Eto'o. So I get that now.
I don't have a Samuel Eto'o World Cup memory that's really positive. I'm not saying he was terrible, but I don't remember him having, despite playing in 4 World Cups, I don't have that was a Samuel Eto'o game. In fact, I kind of have the opposite. I remember in 2014, so even though his career only just ended, he's older in 2014. And I remember Cameroon kind of being built around him and relying on him, and it was almost get the ball to Samuel, and he wasn't quite able to do it, and so that's how they failed in 2014.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think it's also, I may eat my words here, but I don't remember Cameroon playing England in a World Cup. I don't remember Cameroon playing the United States in a World Cup.
They did in 1990, but that was 8 years before Eto'o played for them.
So I think that's probably also part of it, is that you and I have been watching the last 2 World Cups at least every single game, but it still wasn't quite that that next level intensity because it's a team that we're really actively rooting for, and so we're scared of Samuel Eto'o. We're scared of the way we would be of, say, Asamoah Gyan. I will forever be more terrified of Asamoah Gyan than most African strikers.
Of course.
Yeah.
Final thing on Eto'o's national team career, he did win the African Cup of Nations, I believe, twice, for a little bit of reading I did, in the early 2000s. All right, to the second part of Robert's question, where does he rank in top African footballers?
So again, there's a little bit of a wrinkle here. It depends on who you're counting as African, because Eusebio, born in Mozambique, played for Portugal. Claude Makelele, Patrick Vieira, both born in Africa. But I'm going to take Robert's question to mean of people who are
played
identified
for African national teams.
Exactly. Yeah. So with that in mind, I would say he's top 3 to 5 of all time. That's where I am with him.
So with what? George Weah, Didier Drogba.
Those would be the top two for sure.
I always include Abedi Pele. I think that's just because I enjoyed watching him.
I believe he's also. I was looking that up too. I believe he is currently banned from match fixing, so that limits or he got into a lot of trouble with match fixing. So I'm going to leave Abedi Pele alone. I had him in the same tier as maybe Mohamed Salah. We'll see how things develop from here, but definitely Yaya Toure. That's the only other one that I feel like is in that same level.
He's another one who seems to not enjoy Pep Guardiola.
Very true. Yeah. Buy him a birthday cake. Maybe that changes. So I would say, top 3 to top 5 African players of all time.
Okay, and we're not going to rank them because, as with many things, they're all good. Just enjoy them. How about that?
The 30 Rock thing about not listing female comedians, we're not going to do it. It's demeaning.
There we go. I like it. I like it. Okay, next question comes from Eric Rosner. Eric Rosner wants to know, would PSG actually benefit from an equivalent-sized takeover of a rival team in Ligue 1?
So I was slightly confused by this because they literally benefited from this in the sense that Monaco are owned by a gazillionaire and they bought Kylian Mbappe from Monaco, who came through Monaco. So that is kind of my answer, that they already have a little bit.
Oh, but Eric's asking for a competitor in Ligue 1. So say if Monaco had been taken over by a billionaire and that billionaire had invested in the team correctly and built a super team to go up against PSG.
Not gotten divorced, basically?
Yes, right?
I actually think probably not, is strangely enough. Because I know there's the idea of it creates more competition and so more people are interested in it.
Stops them being however many points clear they are at the top of Ligue 1. I don't even know right now, but I bet it's a decent amount.
We assume they want that, and I'm not sure they do. I think they're more than happy to cruise through Ligue 1 and then really focus on the Champions League. And I think if you have another gazillionaire-owned team, I think if Monaco had bought players, now all of a sudden it's not as though one team is going to a league make. And so what you'll end up having is two teams who can both afford any player in the world. And so you're just going to end up we'll bid 60 million, we'll bid 70, we'll bid 80. It's always going to be higher prices that you can drive up on each other.
But don't you see the benefit of staying sharp throughout the year? In a way that, okay, we've got to win this weekend because the other billionaire team is right at our heels instead of being multiple points clear. Right now, by the way, they're 5 points clear with a game in hand.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe, but
it just keeps you sharp so you don't switch off a bit and then suddenly there's a Champions League game and you're all like, whoa, this is upper level. We didn't expect this.
I mean, but by the same token, again, this is what Monaco were meant to be. It just things didn't go that way. But I guess that's my point is but as soon as that one team maybe has an off season, then that pressure is gone. One team is not really going to change that much in my opinion.
Okay, fair enough.
But if you disagree.
I think PSG would benefit, so that Ligue 1 is maybe taken more seriously and PSG's success in Ligue 1 is taken more seriously if they have a proper rival. And I think if you're a competitive person and you enjoy the spirit of going up against someone and emerging victorious, you need a rival to do that, right? That's why Barcelona and Real Madrid, they might say they hate each other, but they feed off of one another and it creates this wonderful, wonderful rivalry. I think PSG would benefit from having that. I think French football would be better off. I think PSG would be better off.
All right. I can see that point. I'm going to add this.
You can see or concede?
I can see that point. But I would say this then. I do think if it were a team that were, to the question, an actual competitor, if somebody bought Marseille and put a bunch of money into them, maybe even put money back into Lyon, who won 7 league titles in a row, because otherwise, then at least it's a historically significant, very good team that are now challenging PSG. If somebody comes in and puts a ton of money into a team that is not very well known, it maybe furthers the reputation of Ligue 1 is just the place for billionaires, and that's it.
So PSG wasn't a particularly well known or successful team. Yeah, I mean, I could imagine Red Bull Lyon giving PSG a run for them.
Were they founded in the 80s, PSG?
I don't know, but they're not historically. Right. They haven't historically been around and been successful for a long time.
Did you say Red Bull Lyon?
Yeah. Or Red Bull Lille would be very interesting.
See, that's the one outlier, though, because it would have to be, because you don't want an RB Leipzig situation. You don't want to have to completely rename the team. Or I guess you do want the Leipzig situation. If it's a smaller team, you can take over... Yeah. I'm trying to think of the Le Havre, who are actually kind of significant in that they keep producing
Red
good
Bull
players.
Le Havre.
Yeah, perfect.
There is Jim Ratcliffe, who was the wealthiest man in England. I think he just lost the title last time round. They did a list. He's some petrochemical type chemical billionaire, essentially. He bought Nice.
By the way, that could not sound more like a supervillain right there.
Right.
A chemical billionaire?
He's a billionaire from a chemical company that he owns, right? He bought Nice this summer, but he bought them in late August. So he bought them too late to spend a load of money. It's possible that this may be about to happen once Jim Ratcliffe's money gets unleashed on Ligue 1 via Nice. This may be happening.
Did you see who he brought in as sporting director?
No.
He's already done that. Cobra Commander is in there. That's who's in charge now. It's an unprecedented situation. We'll see how it plays out.
All right, you're joking, but I'm just saying keep an eye on Nice. Because maybe what Eric is proposing may be about to happen with Nice.
Yeah. Or maybe we're going to get Two-Face. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't trust chemicals, Daryl. I don't trust chemicals.
Oh, okay. Next question.
You know what happens when we cross the hour mark. This is your fault.
Oh, no. Next question is from Matthew Maxon.
Yeah.
Matthew Maxon asks, with negotiations between Major League Soccer and the Major League Soccer Players Association taking place this winter, what do you think are the main things a collective bargaining agreement needs to have to help the league move forward?
I just went ahead and outsourced this directly to Paul Tenorio and Sam Stejskal because they wrote the great article for The Athletic about like how they would completely change things if they were allowed to do so. Sam, I think, was like a little bit leaning more towards like roster rules and how those could be changed. Was the simplification of salary budget rules to reduce limitations such as GAM TAM, specifically TAM. I think that's a lot of people would like to see TAM done away with, and instead it's just sort of here's more money, spend it as you want. There are less restrictions in place, fewer restrictions, I should say. Paul's point was to higher minimum salaries and increases in freedom of movement. And I think that's the one that I would emphasize, would be changing free agency restrictions a little bit more so players can become free agents more easily, but then if you get rid of some of the limitations on what you're allowed to pay free agents, it allows people to sort of have those contract years where they're really performing well in order to be a free agent, in order to make more money. It, I would say, naturally increases competition and the quality of play.
So you and Sam got deep into this on the show, which is really good, by the way. I would recommend people go back and listen to it.
I would love to claim credit for that, but it's about 90% Sam talking.
You listened good.
I did. I think I had to clarify in there that I'm just nodding a lot. I think I just started saying nodding at different points.
So I would agree with the free agency thing. Right now, it's really not generous. You have to be 28 or older with 8 or more years of MLS service, and then you become a free agent. And then your next contract, the raise can only be between 15 and 25% based on various factors. Apparently, there was a worse offer than that the players turned down last time around. I would, if I was the players, I'd be going for I'd ask for total free agency. I think that would be of benefit to the league. I understand the league essentially wants to contain costs, so that's why they wouldn't go for that. But we can really, it's so harsh that you can really liberalise that, right? You could remove an age restriction. You could drop it from 8 years to 4 years. You could widen out those 15 to 25% raises. You could make it so that players can try and have contract year type situations.
Yeah, because I mean, I think, and Sam kept making this point that like there was a time when you had 3 ownership groups owning all of the teams, and you kind of had to limit, like, so you didn't have favoritism of one team getting all the money and all the attention from that owner. We've moved away from that. You don't have that as much now, and so if anything, these rules really do kind of exist. It's harder to say like, well, we're worried about favoritism, we're worried about one team getting really dominant, and instead, or like from an owner just giving them more money, and now it's more of a like, we don't want one team to be dominant from their one individual owner being willing to spend more than everybody else. And so a lot of these restrictions, it feels exist to sort of limit the bids between teams, the competitiveness between teams, and to limit player movement so that you don't have as much competition or you don't have as much team infighting, basically.
So that players can't drive up salaries, basically, right? It's a cost control measure. I think MLS players are really behind in terms of how much freedom they have and how many rights they have. I think a really obvious one would be to raise the minimum salary. So by 2019, the minimum salary for a senior player was about $70,000, and for what's called like a reserve player of if you're 24 or younger, $56,000. Both those numbers definitely will go up, right? Because the number basically goes up every year. So it wouldn't be a major thing for that number to go up, but let's expect that number. I
mean, that's the equivalent of like a cost of living raise. Like that's not that big of a deal. And I want to take one more shot at this to clearly explain what I was trying to get at, which is basically just that to your point about free agents, you can only pay them a certain amount more than they were already making. But so like literally
you can't really have a contract year. You can only have a 25% increase contract.
And also it means that it doesn't really matter because whichever team gives you that 25%, only other teams can only match that. So you still can't have...
You can't start a bidding war.
Right. So if I get in trouble when I do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you're deciding between like Inter Miami and Minnesota's very cold in the winter. Miami is not ever very cold. If they're bidding the exact same amount, you're probably going to choose Miami. And like that, I think it still gives natural...
Do you make all your decisions based on temperature?
I think some people do, man. But I guess that's what I mean is that you don't have the opportunity for Minnesota to say, we'll give you $10,000 more a season because they literally can't because of the restrictions. So in trying to prevent sort of like teams from being favored or teams getting a competitive advantage, they're giving people advantages. That's my feeling.
One thing I'd say to Matthew about this question is the CBA is about player welfare almost, right? It's about how much salary you have. It's about like how many doctors you have to see. It's literally about how much vacation you get. Whereas I think what Matthew's more interested in probably is rewriting the MLS roster rules, sort of like what Sam and Paul's article was all about. I would guess as well, maybe Matthew's question came in before the podcast with Sam. So it may be that a lot of the answers to Matthew's question are contained within that Sam Stejskal interview. So if you haven't heard that yet, Matthew, please go back and listen.
That's my answer. Go listen to that one.
Go listen
Don't
to
ask
that
me questions.
one.
Instead, I'll ask the final question for this show.
We didn't raise the issue of flights. So that's definitely one major thing, right? They could negotiate in the CBA. They could negotiate for like guaranteed charter flights, something like that. They'll definitely meet a lot of pushback from MLS owners, but they could. Right now, they have anything. I ran and read it. Anything over 250 miles from airport to airport is a commercial flight, like not a coach journey or whatever. It would be a major step forward if the MLS CBA included anything over 250 miles is a chartered flight. Yeah. Because then players would arrive without cramped legs and sore muscles from sitting on a commercial airliner. It genuinely would improve the standard of play if players could travel in style. And I've learned this year with Wolves in the Europa League. Have you noticed Wolves have been playing the same team in the Europa League as in the Premier League and doing really well in both?
Yeah.
It's because they have this beautiful plane to sit on afterwards where they have like ice on there's space to have ice on their legs and do whatever needs doing.
You can like stretch out and lay down and have beds.
Yes, part of the recovery period is on the plane.
Right. Yeah, of course, as opposed to being jammed into 3 seats.
Yes.
With very limited legroom.
Yep, and it lowers the standard of on-field play. So more chartered flights or guaranteed charter flights.
I mean, even
there's no way because the owners won't agree to it, but I'd be willing to ask for it if I was in the MLSPA.
I am not a wearing a mask in public sort of person, but I will say like airplanes are just contained recycled air of other people's coughs. Like if nothing else, like you're going to get fewer players sick throughout the season because they're on very nice, very spacious private planes.
Yep. Yep.
All right, final question comes from Taylor Judd, who asks, how are UK citizens allocated to national teams? They all have a UK passport, but they play for England, Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. How does this work? So
I'm guessing Taylor is responding to our recent Soccer 101 episode titled, How Many Countries Are in This Country?
Can I pause you right there for a moment to ask, is that like... I get the structure of the joke, but is the joke itself technically incorrect? Should it be more like, how many regions are in this country?
I mean, kind of. Well, no, the joke is correct, right? The joke is the fact that it's such a bizarre situation. But you could refer to them as regions.
Right, because they're not actually countries, which I think is the thing that's kind of confusing for me personally.
Yes. Well, they are countries, but the United Kingdom is a unitary sovereign state which sort of supersedes the existence of the 4 separate countries. So think of it this way then.
Yeah.
Everybody who is from England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland gets a UK passport. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. But then there are 4 football teams within the United Kingdom. The reason for that is explained in our Soccer 101 episode.
Let's just tease it there.
So
go listen to that.
Go listen to that. But then Taylor asks the interesting question, like if you have a UK passport, why can't you just say, oh, I'll play for Wales, right?
I forgot who asked this question. I was like, I asked that?
So essentially, there's a gentleman's agreement between the FAs of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, essentially to treat their territory or their region as if it was a properly divided nation with its own passport, and therefore not allow a person born in England to English parents, English grandparents, spends their whole life in England, can't just say, I'm the 7th best left back in England. I want an international career. Wales need a left back. I'll just go play for them.
Yeah. And so that makes, the way you just phrased that makes a ton of sense to me, because I did struggle with the idea of like, but they have their own FA, but they're not a country, so why does it? And I think the answer, or like, but they're a country, it's all very confusing. And the thing that you just said that's very clear is like the gentleman's agreement essentially is like, okay, we're just going to treat it as though we are 4 distinct nations in order to then have what are otherwise like very standard rules of like if you want to play for the U.S., you have to be born in the United States or have an American parent or grandparent or what have you.
And essentially they've just had a gentleman's agreement where they've just recreated those rules. So to quickly read out the gentleman's agreement, they say you can only play for the association.
I feel like you could read it more like a gentleman.
If one was born in the territory of the relevant association, has a biological mother or father born in the territory of the relevant association, or has one biological grandparent born in the territory of the association. So it essentially means you need a bloodline going to Scotland. So if you're born in England but you have a grandparent who came from Scotland, you could play for Scotland. Then the other recently added one is if you've engaged in a minimum of 5 years education under the age of 18 within the territory of the relevant association. So you could be born in England, English parents, English grandparents, but if you spend the ages 11 to 16 in school in Scotland, you would qualify to play for Scotland.
But is this why, like going back a ways to when England just had garbage goalkeepers, there was that talk of like Manuel Almunia has never been capped by Spain. He's played in England long enough. He could get
citizenship. They talked about it as well,
but
right?
would that then actually never have been possible because it would violate that rule?
It would violate the gentleman's agreement. Yes. So even though that ends up in the papers and all that sort of stuff, this thing hasn't been violated yet. And if it does get violated, then either you have to rewrite it, and maybe they would add a fifth category that was like has played professionally in the relevant association for 10 years or whatever.
Are you telling me that the British press created a weird narrative that wasn't actually factually possible without really doing the research to explain that it wasn't factually possible?
Did you notice that it got talked about a lot but never really happened? Yeah. And no one from the clubs ever said, yeah, let's do this.
Also that.
And Mikel Arteta never said, yeah, let's do this. And Manuel Almunia never said, let's do this.
Yeah. Or at the very least, they're like, I'm open to it, but I don't know the rules and regulations, so I don't know. Yeah. All right. Interesting.
So that's basically it. The associations agreed to treat the component parts of the UK as if they were fully fledged nations and just abide by those boundaries.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Because I was always confused by that.
With one-time switches and everything, right?
Yeah.
You could have a one-time switch the same way that you have between Italy and the United States. You can have a one-time switch between England and Scotland.
All right, I have another final question for you then.
Yeah.
Do you actually, this is strange, do you need to file that one-time switch?
Yeah, because FIFA treats it like separate nations.
Okay, FAs, there we go.
And again, for why FIFA treats it like separate nations, please go back and listen to Soccer 101. How many countries are in this country?
That one I could answer, and how many countries are in this country. But I was just thinking, like, if it's a gentleman's agreement, it is. If it's a gentleman's agreement, don't you just have to have a gentleman's agreement of like, oh no, now he can play for Scotland? But no, in reality, yes, of course.
That's not how gentleman stuff works.
It doesn't? That was all top hats and monocles and muttering.
Yeah, I mean, that's how the FA used to work.
Rabble.
All right, thank you to everybody for today's questions. If you'd like to ask us a question, it's totalsoccershow.com/questions. If you support the show via totalsoccershow.com/join at $10 a month or more, we guarantee to answer one of your questions per month. Let's just close by saying, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again soon.